Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. I'm sitting here with my friend Pat, and we're in the same chair. So
two is one.
You will get that reference in a little bit. So in this episode, first off, I apologize for the shitty audio quality. I brought my microphone, but I forgot to bring the plug into it. So we're rocking with the shitty laptop audio quality. So apologies for that. That out of the way, this episode is going to be a recap of our experience at this week-long advanced meditation retreat that we did with Dr. Joe Dispenza, who is many things. One of his books is Becoming Supernatural. And we're going to be detailing what happened, what we learned, our transformations, and about the experience. So let's bring this a little closer so you can hear us, and let's jump right in. Scoot up.
Yep.
All right. Pat, go ahead. Well, first give an introduction.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Pat Smith, a client of Taylor's, and also do health and wellness coaching. I've been meditating and on a personal journey for 5 to 6 years or so, and been doing Joe Dispenza's work for roughly 1 to 2 years, pretty consistently there for maybe 3 to 5 months, and then kind of sporadic throughout. I've been wanting to go to an event for quite some time, and this just happened to pop up and fit my schedule. So when I saw it was on the map, that I decided that I was going to kind of jump right into this, and I invited Taylor. Taylor and I actually only met about 5 months ago, just through coaching and whatnot. And so yeah, we're just here and had a great time.
Yeah, ready to rock. All right. So since you invited me here, go ahead and tell us what drew you to his work, and then why did you want to do one of these advanced meditation retreats?
Sure. So for me, I would have been meditating for maybe 4 or so years before I ever even heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I heard him on a podcast, and I really was interested in the transformations that he was causing amongst his followers and the people who were doing his work. And I decided that why not give it a shot? And so I started doing some of the meditations. And within 30 days, when I was doing these meditations, I can truly say things transformed for myself personally, not just for my own good, but just for the greater good, I guess, of everyone around me. So when I saw that, that really drew me into his work. And I guess I'd never really been on a retreat or anything of that kind. And so when I saw this one come up, it was in San Diego. So great place to be. Hadn't been here in roughly 15 years. And last time I was here, I was relatively young, so I didn't get to experience it quite the right way. And this time I knew it was going to be something more intense, and I was going to be able to get a true understanding of the what and why behind his work. I've read his books, I've listened to the meditations, but to be there, to actually be in person, to learn something, and then be around 1,500 like-minded people and bounce those perspectives back and forth, I knew that was going to be huge growth for myself. So it was just it was a bit of an investment, but it wasn't an expense on my end. I would say it was more of an investment, because I know it's going to help serve myself and serve my community.
Expensive is a mindset.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely an investment, because it was $2,000, well, plus the hotel and the flight and travel, extra food, whatever. But it's like, what else are you going to spend $2,000 on? It's like,
yeah.
And especially once we get into how transformational this work can be, it really doesn't matter how much he charges. Like, you'll pay for it, because it can literally change your life. So my introduction to Dr. Joe Dispenza, I don't remember exactly how I found out about him. I've been in the health and wellness space, as you guys know, for I would say like 8 years now. And I don't know if it was on a podcast or what, but I had been familiar with his work. Never dove deep into it. Becoming Supernatural was on my list to read. I got it for Christmas this last year. So when Pat invited me to this retreat, I started reading it. Lot of profound work in here. And I don't even want to go too in depth into the details, because if you hear us explain it, you're going to be like, these guys are fucking woo woo out there, like talking nonsense. But the cool thing is that he's got like science and data to back it all up. So in this section of the book, you can kind of see on here, it's like all graphs and pictures of like actual data that they've collected at these events. And I was actually going to be part of one of the studies. Pat is part of one of the studies. I was going to be in the Imagine study, where they were going to take a blood, saliva for DNA, and measure HRV, measure sleep, and what else? They had us do EEG readings while we were meditating, and then also an fMRI scan. And I am no longer a part of that study, because at UCSD, they didn't let me take an MRI without a mask on. So I just said, okay, no, thank you. So unfortunately, that still exists, which we can have a whole conversation about that, but that's not what this podcast is about. So talk about the gene study.
Yeah, fortunately for me, no mask required for the gene study, but it was just a blood test and a saliva test. And their biggest point on what they're trying to research is finding how meditation affects our genes and our gene expression, the upregulation of good genes and the genes that maybe we may have never reached to our full potential, and then downregulating some of the genes that have been expressed that might be detrimental to our health. And then also working on getting some ideas on some of the proteins like serpin-A5, which is really they've shown to basically not allow COVID-19 into the cells. And then the last one was just being able to recycle and repair DNA that may have been damaged, and also extending our telomere length, which kind of equates to our biological age. So throughout the study, we, a pre and post blood and saliva sample, and then through the meditations, at points I was trying to recall some of the things on how, being in that space of a creative space, opposed to being, in my analytical mind or anything like that, and just trying to recreate some of that. And then they're going to try to go ahead and prove that through the actual draws that they'll do through the 60 participants out of 1,500 people that were there.
You sound so smart.
Thank you.
Throwing out serpin-5 and all these genetic words. Another really cool study that they were doing here was they had 6 sets of twins, and they were doing a lot of the things in the study that I was a part of. But another cool thing is they would have one of the twins do one of the meditations, and then the other twin in another room doing something completely different, both with EEG caps on to measure their brain waves. And they're going to see if the twin that's meditating, or if the twin that's not meditating, can feel some of the coherence or get some of the brain waves from the twin who is meditating, which will be fascinating to see the results of that. And identical twins, by the way.
Yep.
So that was super cool. All right. Well, let's do a recap of all the days. You took much more extensive notes than I did, so we will rely on your note-taking abilities.
Yeah, and we're just going to go more into our experience as opposed to the teachings, from my understanding.
Our experience. Like we said, and Dr. Joe actually mentioned this, that nobody should be teaching this stuff unless it's been taught to them by him personally or one of his students that he's taught. So we're just giving our experience, our takeaways from the seminar. So I'll start with just a few quotes that I wrote down that he said. These are some of the ones that really stood out to me. A memory without an emotion is wisdom. So think about that. Like, you have all these memories, all these stories that you're telling yourself. And most of the time, unless you've worked through them extensively, there's some emotion, usually a negative emotion, that are tied to those stories. And what this whole week was about was basically not necessarily forgetting the stories, but taking the emotion out of them and then using that to grow. So it turns it into wisdom. And then another one that stood out was the universe only gives us what we believe we are worthy of receiving, which I believe I mentioned this in, I think it was episode 129 about Road to Union. One of the things that came to me was I have a difficult time receiving. I'm very much a giver. I love to give, and it's difficult for me to truly receive things and love. And that was one of the major breakthroughs from this weekend, especially during the coherence healings, when he was like, receive, like the love you give is the love you receive. Like that really got to me. So if you guys are listening right now and you're wondering why things aren't going better in your life, ask yourself, do you feel worthy of those things? Are you scared of success? Do you believe that your life is worth being happy about? You know, a lot of times we say we want these things, but then we don't actually feel worthy of them. Let's see. This isn't a direct quote, but something that came from him. Why are you addicted to a life you don't even like? I feel like the majority of, I was going to say Americans, but I guess most people are living this life that they believe that they have to live, that they don't even like. You know, you wake up in the morning to an alarm clock, go through the same pattern, immediately start thinking about all the negative things, the news, you scroll social media, find out all the stuff that's happening, immediately put your attention on OPP, other people's priorities, other people's problems, start getting stressed out about that. Then, you know, you make your coffee, make your breakfast, get in the car, go to a job that you don't even like doing, spend 8 hours a day in a chair under fluorescent lights, disgruntled about the work you're doing, complaining to your coworkers at the water machine, whatever you call it, complaining about your boss. Then you go home, you're stressed out because of traffic. Then you get home, you want to be present with your family, but you're so stressed out about work and you just want to take time to relax and sit on the couch and watch TV. And then you go to bed and wake up and do it all over again. And then you say you don't have time to meditate, to journal, to work out, to eat properly. So that means you're addicted because you don't want to make time for anything else. You're addicted to this life that you don't even enjoy living. That's like,
yeah, when he said that, that was powerful. And I think he also mentioned, he said, so many people, and, you know, when you go into the work a little bit, they see other people happy and they're put those projections on you and they're like, why are you happy? But it's the better question would be, why are you unhappy? And it's not a projection back to them in a rude or rude way. It's just you are doing things in your life, obviously, to be happy. And so if people are unhappy, their reflection shouldn't be asking you why. They should be asking themselves why, and that they can put that energy back into themselves.
Yeah. So before we go into the day-by-day breakdown, who would you say that this work is for? Like, who should listen to this podcast, first of all?
Based off the people that were at the actual event, I would say anybody. You could have, you know, young gentlemen like us, significant others, family members, friends, anybody who really is just trying to get better or is trying to overcome what the smallest or greatest issue that they could be dealing with, whether it's small, like, I guess, time management, or I guess bad thoughts, all the way up to stage 4 cancer or disabilities, like the people that we saw walk out of their wheelchairs for the first time.
Yeah. He mentioned basically every single thing that somebody struggles with. Mm-hmm. Sexual abuse, anxiety, depression, eczema, cancer, like you said, like you name it. He's seen people heal from it. And like Pat said, we saw people stand up out of their wheelchairs for the first time and walk doing this work. So with that being said, this work is for everybody. Dr. Joe makes it universal. You can be any race, you could be male, female, any size. Like, it doesn't matter what you eat. You can be in the worst possible health situation. You could use this work. similar to how we did to just improve our lives. Like there's nothing necessarily wrong, right? But we just use it to take us to the next level. So literally anybody.
The other thing too is it's really, and people were asking Taylor, I think, and we were like, well, what's the common denominator amongst all these people? And really the only thing that we could come up with is that they're curious and they're open-minded and they're looking to do something better with their lives than whatever they're in right now. And that doesn't take much, but just to be willingness to learn and try something. And, the doctor, the research scientist says it the same thing. Like the worst side effect with meditation is nothing. But yeah, so I won't go too far into that. But when I think of all their side effects and certain things that so many people try, that was just, it was simply put, it's like you can meditate and nothing might happen, but it's not detrimental, but you're not advancing. So you're still at the same point. And without it, you still would have been at that same point anyway. So that was that was something that clicked with me.
Yeah. So absolutely curiosity and having an open mind. If you have those two things, this work will be transformational for you. Mm-hmm. You have to have an open mind. You have to be curious about learning. Mm-hmm. And so if you get annoyed in traffic, if you let other people or external circumstances stress you out, if somebody asks you, how are you feeling? And you say, I'm feeling this way because of this person, thing, or event is causing me to still feel this way, whether that just happened or whether it happened 20 years ago. If you're still affected by those things, this work is for you. If you are not fully stoked on life, if you don't understand what it means to play with reality, like just having fun for no particular reason, just to have fun. Like yesterday, after we ended the event for that day, we went down to the peninsula around here in San Diego, and one of the guys here is a DJ, and he set up his booth and played music. We were the first two down there. There was nobody else in this little, music thing, and everybody, it's a popular place. It's Saturday night in San Diego, so there's a bunch of other people out and about, and we're just two weirdos, right, to everybody else dancing in the middle of the grass. But we're stoked, like we're just playing, we're having fun, and everybody's looking at us like, what? And then eventually more people started to come, and then they joined us, and it was an amazing time. So if you have difficulty, like I used to, playing with life and just dancing and not caring what other people are thinking, like if you hold back on the dance floor because you think somebody else is looking at you for some reason, what they might think, this work is for you.
Yeah. And to add to that point, it's like, if you're in that thought process, more than likely that person is thinking the same thing as you. So now you guys are just totally throwing kind of cross waves off. And, one of the things, I guess, and just to maybe go into the next little thing, was for at least myself, and I know Taylor and I talked about it, was one of the biggest things for me and for trying to get into a little bit more playfulness was just trying to get out of my analytical mind during a lot of the meditations. And that's kind of the same thing. If you're always constantly worrying about, what other people might think or whatever, that's all going to bring up past emotions. And that was one of the things that yesterday at the kind of dance off, I guess, or just the party, that once we kind of got past that, other people felt comfortable to be a little bit more vulnerable to come in. And at times there's videos of little kids breakdancing in it. There was maybe a 2-year-old playing a little thing. And I mean, there was people from not just from the event, but just anybody coming in and just enjoying a good time. So that was, that curiosity is something that even for myself, I can personally say is something that this weekend week has reminded me is to be a bit more childlike in terms of my play, and be okay with stepping away from work for a little bit, and be okay with, trying to find out and learn new ideas and expand your mind in ways that, you might think would be weird, because someone else would say, if you were doing that, you might be weird. It's you just have to get past that point. It's, that's a lot of wasted energy to try to put it on what someone else might think of you. And
speaking of childlike, we have a lot to learn from kids, because like he said, these kids just came up and we had a dance circle going, and you know how you and myself included are somewhat afraid to get into the middle of the dance circle and dance in front of everybody. These kids jumped right in and started breaking it down. They didn't care. Everybody was watching them. They could care less. And that's what's so special about kids is they haven't developed this, whatever you want to call it, anxiety or stress around. Yeah, they're not analyzing the situation. They're just playing. They're just having fun. And most of us as adults have lost that. And this work is one of the steps of how we can start to bring that back. Mm-hmm. So let's get into day one. What are
day one? We did a couple of different meditations, and the first one was really just like the blessing of the energy center. So I guess for myself, as I just mentioned, it was just when you're sitting in, I wouldn't say silence, but when you're sitting in meditation for that long and you're someone who's a very driven person or has a lot going on, a lot of responsibilities, it's very easy to think on what's the next thing I have to do, or, what's going on with work or whatever the case is. So
first off, before you continue, these meditations were like, I think the shortest one was like 90 minutes.
Yeah. So they were
2 hours.
So it was, once you got into it, it was no going back. And it just took a lot to overcome your analytical mind. So, some of the notes that I had, it was just to always remind myself through that first meditation that my mind's the control center and my body just will follow what it does. But when I go unconscious, my body does whatever that routine is. So I just had to constantly remind myself around, hey, I'm the control center. So when that thought about, dang, how many work emails I've got, I've only been here for one day, I bet I've got a bunch of work emails, or how's this thing going at work, or how is my significant other doing? Like, I couldn't worry about that because, one of the models Dr. Joe talks about is having your energy in the present moment. And if this is the present moment and you've got thinking about stuff in the future and then the past, then it's drawing that energy away out from you. And you don't have the correct energy to create internal projects that you might need to do, whether it's repair and heal or upgrade your brain or whatever the case is. Mm-hmm. So I reminded myself of that throughout the meditation, that I'm the control center. And the win of that really was just that I overcame constant thoughts there and there and there. And it didn't have any significant breakthroughs in that meditation being at the first one, but just to be proud of myself that I got through it and that I progressed more than I would have, and that I had a good starting point to go with. And we talked about this at breakfast, and I just kind of reflected back on this, but the blessing of the energy centers is kind of like the chakra system, if you will. And it's got energy centers all the way up from basically your pelvis, where a lot of your sexual drive comes from and whatnot, all the way up to your brain. And usually the first three centers are really our survival energy centers. So that's going to be, like he mentioned, things to procreate, things to protect, in terms of, especially for males, procreate, protect, and then provide. So when we're in that constant environment of just making sure that we're just saving the species or taking care of our loved ones, we forget to be in 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is our heart, love, expressing that love, and then being able to be a little bit more creative and open. And the first meditation, when we were going through those, took a lot for me to get. My mind was going crazy when I tried to focus my energy on the first few energy centers. And after our conversation today at breakfast with another gentleman, Chris, I realized, looking back, that the reason it was so hard for me is because I'm usually stuck in those survival centers. So there was so much discomfort subconsciously that I didn't realize that all those analytical thoughts were coming up more here than they were in I guess the upper energy centers, because I'm never in these energy centers. So there wasn't much for it to discomfort or uncomfort. It was new. It was all new. Whereas all through the survival energy centers, it was I was very distracted through that. But once I got through those, I started to feel into it a little more. And that was something that I had to take into me all the way until today, which is really day 7 of the event. Mm-hmm. And, I look at it in terms of weight loss, I guess. It's like, I've been building that up for a long time to stay in that survival energy center and grind and do all these things and forget to get up in my heart and love. But that's been for years and years and years. So I can't just expect it to go away like that. And, like I said, even seven days plus 35 plus hours of meditation still hasn't got me to that point. But the progression has been, I guess transformational.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a very, very, very basic, like level -0 understanding and explanation of the blessing of the energy centers meditation. And that's going to be across the board with everything that we talk about. It's very, very, very surface level. So if you're intrigued by any of this work, pick up, I would say Becoming Supernatural is a fantastic place to start. Read this book, watch his YouTube videos. I'm sure that there's videos, probably not of the actual like workshops, but he's done many podcasts before where he talks about his work. So look up some of those.
Like some good ones I know: Aubrey Marcus, Lewis Howes, Ed Milet, any of those.
Tom Bilyeu.
Yeah, Tom Bilyeu, a lot of those. And he gets a little bit more in depth, and obviously we're not experts, but just to kind of briefly overview of that. So we're just talking about more our experience. And my experience on day one was frustration, a little bit of anger, stress about things that I thought I needed to do, posting on social media. So if you guys follow me, you'll know that for this whole entire week, I didn't post a single piece of content, where normally I post at least 2-3 times a day. I had a podcast be released that I didn't promote at all. Didn't really answer any emails. This comes later, but like it was on like day 3 or 4. I just accepted the fact that I'm not going to get any work done, because that was stressing me out. During the breaks, I was like trying to get a Wi-Fi signal, which the Wi-Fi sucks in this hotel. And I was just stressing myself out because I couldn't do the work things that it was my routine. And so during the meditation, where we're just sitting in a chair for 2+ hours, these, especially because I have such an analytical mind, these thoughts are coming in like, oh, you need to do this. Why are you sitting in this meditation? Go do this. You're not being productive. And at the beginning, his voice was extremely, extremely annoying to me during these meditations, because he changes his voice. He starts talking like, let's give an example. Yeah. That's energy for your heart. Feel that. That's energy for your brain. And these long drawn out words and slow pauses were it was so annoying to me, because I normally watch YouTube videos and listen to podcasts on double speed. So I'm used to people talking like super, super fast like that. It's like, tell me the information and let's go. Let's get on with it. I got stuff to do. So to sit in a chair for 2 hours, not doing anything, quote unquote, because you are doing something. And I did eventually overcome my body and my habits. It was frustrating at first. And that's the first thing that I had to overcome, was that frustration. And so I had to keep telling myself, I am greater than my body, because your body is going to send you these chemical signals because that has been your routine, right? It's like an addiction to the life that you don't even enjoy living. I was addicted to doing everything fast, right? Especially as like this high performance coach, right? Like I got to be so productive all the time. And so that was the first thing that I had to overcome, was that frustration and telling myself that I'm greater than my body. Yeah.
That the mind is in control.
Yeah. And later that day, we ended up going into, I think we duplicated the same meditation the second time. And that was a good meditation for myself. Just finally getting out of 1, 2, and 3, those energy centers. And then basically what that did for me was getting into a place of not being tied to my identity or who I was, or someone, someplace, something, sometime. Basically disassociating myself with the predictable future, what I have to do, and all these things that I'm starting to feel emotions about already that are in the future that haven't even already happened, and feeling the known past, which is the emotions of the past that have triggered me to think that way. So getting past that, and then getting into kind of the no one, no place, no thing, no time, nowhere. I think I overdid one. But basically that's your heart center. And once you're in the heart center, basically it just allowed me to really open up a little bit more and be a little bit more free about, a little bit more, I guess, in tune with the energy of the room, and realizing that we're all frequency, and, everybody's interconnected in one way or the other, but it takes us to release those energy centers first. So that was a win for me. And then kind of just getting stretched into kind of what Taylor talked about, was getting past our known self and getting into more of the unknown. And that allowed me to get past the comfort levels of whatever my routine is, similar to him, work a lot, work out, I'm always got the next thing that I've got lined up. So that got me a little bit out of my comfort level. But then as I progressed, I started to be a little bit more comfortable about being outside of that discomfort, which was a good progress all within, the first couple of days. And it really just kind of started to trigger my mind in ways that I could continue to improve.
Yeah. And by the way, they don't really allow you time to work.
Mm-hmm.
So we got workouts in because we woke up at 4 on most of the days and went to the gym at 4:30, which on most of the days we started at 6 a.m. So we would get up early to work out. And then during the day, you're basically in, lecture and or meditation all day. You get a 30-minute break, and then a breakfast and lunch break, and then another 30-minute break. And so they don't really allow you much time to work. And then we get off at like 7 p.m. and then it's time to go to bed because we're waking up early to go work out. Mm. So they set it up intentionally. Well, one, there's a lot of information that they got to cover, because he covers the science of all this, because it's been studied, it's been documented. This isn't just crazy woo-woo stuff. So yeah, it's a lot of information, and they don't want you really connected to the outside world, because the outside world and your inbox and your text messages and your social media are all representations of your past self, of the person you used to be. Mm-hmm. Right. So my communication with the outside world was minimal, very minimal. Like I said, I didn't post on social media at all. I only texted like 2 people the whole entire time. And my phone was in airplane mode most of the time. Actually, I got a note. Oh, my phone's recording. I got a notification saying my screen time was down like 60% from the past week, just because we didn't have time to use it.
Right.
So anything else from day one to cover?
Not too much. I guess the other thing that I started to think about a lot through the meditation to get into a more comfortable state of the meditation was just to surrender into it instead of resisting it or try to create something and fully think on it. Because I saw he had written down that the more you think on it, the more you actually end up pushing it away. So surrendering it and allowing it to come in. So and that reflected back onto me is like giving love, but getting love. And it was this continuous cycle. But the only way for me to give love is if I am love. But the only way for me to be love is if I'm willing to receive it and basically kind of get past my analytical mind and allow that to be free flowing. So to surrender and allow the love in so that I can give love back and let that cycle continue. And I was thinking about, everybody says full send. And I was like, my whole motto for the first few days was just full surrender into the meditations.
Yep. All right. Day 2 highlights.
Yeah. And then, so day 2, kind of to the full opposite point of that, I went in. Day 1's last meditation for me personally was great. And I thought it went really well. I felt like I was in a good rhythm, felt good into my heart, give love, get love, all that type of stuff. But then leading into that, being the person that I am, I automatically thought that the meditation the next day, I was here on the end of day 1. So I had to be here. That's my normal tendency. So I went in there with so much expectations, and I took additional time to really get past a lot of the certain areas that I got past really quick in the last meditation. And because of that, I was a little bit too critical on myself on how the meditation went compared to something else. And I talked with a lot of the peers, and we'll get into that a little bit, but talked with a lot of the peers, and really they reminded me that it's not about one meditation versus the other. It's each individual experience. The experience is the experience. It's not this experience versus this experience, because if you're thinking that way, then you're ultimately living in the past. And the only way to truly create is to be in the future. So getting away from that past meditation was helpful to me, but that first one on day 2 was a bit of a struggle, to say the least.
Yeah. I don't remember specific meditations, but it was the same for me. Like each meditation up until a point, I don't remember, it was sometime on day 2, they kept getting progressively better. And same thing, I had this expectation like, okay, well, last meditation went this way, now I can do a little bit better in this one. And it's not about being better than, because the longer you go, you can't keep getting every single meditation, every single anything isn't going to be better than the last one necessarily. You can't just keep getting better every single time you do something. You can learn from it, but that doesn't mean that one is necessarily going to be better than the other. They're just different experiences. So something I learned was to, instead of put an expectation on something, to just allow the experience to be the experience. Similar to what I believe I talked on episode 128, I think with Anthony Miranda, maybe, or on the podcast with Zach Blakeney, like sex, for example. A lot of guys especially put such a huge expectation on the end goal of either ejaculating themselves or having their partner orgasm, that it's like, unless that happens, the whole act was a failure. And that causes a lot of performance anxiety, and you don't actually enjoy the moment because you're focused on this thing in the future, instead of just being present and enjoying the moment for what it is. So similar in these meditations, to not have any expectation, to just go into it, to be present in that moment, and to learn how to enjoy whatever comes up, and not be frustrated with things that you cannot control, like his voice.
Yeah. and when we went into the next day, we Taylor and I shared a lot of the, I guess, reflections and experiences that we were having throughout the meditations. And right away, I think day 2, was it day 2? Day 2 or day 3? I'm not sure. One of the days, I just remember sitting next to him at the beginning of the meditation. I think it was this one where I have notes on, where I told him, I'm like, no expectations. There's no good or bad. There's no right or wrong. It's just, and of course, there's no technique to it. It's just an act. You get to pick how you want to act based off the model and how you understand his teachings. And so this, the next meditation that we did, I think it was closer towards the end of day 2. I was so critical on the first one of the day that the second one was no expectations. Like I said, there's no good or bad. There's no doing it right or wrong, because if you're thinking it's right or wrong, you're basing it off of something in the past on who's told you what's right or wrong. There's no right or wrong or good or bad. That's all kind of internal. So getting over that and just stepping into the experience and just doing the act alone allowed me to get into a much better creative space, and really just allowed me to be much more out of my analytical mind, which, seems like we're talking about the analytical mind a lot, but as I mentioned, it's programmed into us from so much repetitiveness that even into this 2 or 3 days in, that was still, a constant thing that came up. But the no expectations thing was the other mantra besides surrendering, the no expectations in each meditation, just allowing it to be an experience. Because that's what really kind of got me to the next level as we progressed through the week.
Day 3. Anything?
I might have skipped some notes.
Yeah, no worries. Let's just go to day 4.
Yeah, day 4. Day 4 was, I think that was I don't know which day was it, but nonetheless, Friday, we start to have, we get a little bit more in depth into kind of the creation centers and understanding how we release certain, chemicals in the brain to get us into a little bit more creative area. And one of the things that we got into was the kaleidoscope and coherence around really tuning into the actual frequency. And during that, at the end of the meditation, for me, it was super profound, and actually getting to see a visual of something that came up for me, and how in depth you.
Yeah. So this is already going over the top of most people's heads. So let's just give a brief overview of what we're talking about when we say frequency, and like what the quantum is. Like we're in 3D reality right now. And then there's 4D and then there's 5D, which I believe is the quantum, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, yeah, go ahead and just briefly explain like surface level what we're talking about when we mean frequency and connecting to that frequency.
Yeah. So,
so like how he explained it was like in the beginning, before the Big Bang. There was source, God, whatever you want to call it, wholeness, oneness, just pure love and consciousness. And then it thought, okay, is there anything other than oneness? Is there anything other than this? And then as soon as you have that thought, that means that you're separate from oneness and wholeness. And that's, in his explanation, was the Big Bang. Mm-hmm. And so all this energy was just dispersed. And basically so matter, like things and us and everything in our 3D reality that we can visually see, is the furthest away that we can get from source. Is there a diagram for this? You continue.
Yeah. And so, once you're at source and as we get programmed by all of our past emotions and past histories and the things we see on social media and the news, basically is taking us away from source, and we start to be further and further away from that. And that's when we get into 3D reality. And for what we had learned was, once you get past those programs, those emotions, traumas, what you've been programmed with through the news, then you get past that 3D reality into 4D reality, which is ultimately no one, nowhere. So you don't have an identity. You just are. You just are. And then once you're there, you are that much closer to the actual frequency of what 5D really goes.
So here we go. Here's a diagram. If you're not watching the YouTube version, go watch the YouTube version. This little diagram here kind of explains it. So all the way up to the top, well, not all the way, because it's supposed to be a straight line, is pure consciousness, is source, God, pure love. That's it. And then the further down we descend, and by the way, this is all light. This is all wavelengths of light. And then here we've got like X-rays and gamma rays, and then we've got like visible light. And then all the way down here, we've got matter, which is what we are. This is our frequency. And then on this next page, we can see the breakdown of 3D, 4D, and 5D. So in 3D reality, we think of ourselves as somebody. We have an identity, like it's who we are. And then we think of things, and we have to be somewhere, and we're always worried about time and all of these things that we're normally worried about. And then in 4D, it's pure consciousness. So we are nobody, no one, no thing, nowhere, and in no time, which this podcast, we're not going to be able to explain it. And then 5D is your source. You're everyone, everything, everybody, everywhere, and every time. You are everything. Mm-hmm. So, and how we can connect to 4D and 5D is through these frequencies, because everything is a frequency, and frequencies carry information. It's like a transducer. We're going to get a little technical here. It's a transducer, and your pineal gland in your brain is your transducer. And without getting super in depth with this, it basically acts as a radio receiver, a TV antenna, like a cell phone that picks up Wi-Fi signals. So it takes information, frequencies from 3D reality, 4D, 5D, and turns it into information in your head. And so when he says, tuning into a new frequency, it's using your pineal gland. And I haven't really experienced this. I didn't get that crazy aha moment that a lot of people had, because I need to keep practicing. I'm very new to this, but that's what he means when he's saying connect to that frequency.
Yeah. So once I kind of got through the 3D reality of being identified to someone and need to be somewhere, and I was in some time on when is lunch and all like getting past all that, getting into 40 where I was just being, and when I was much quicker into, I guess, pure consciousness, it allowed for certain things to come up for me to be able to kind of maybe grow from. And the meditation in itself allowed me to see, you know, something profound, which was basically during the meditation, we were taught to think the frequency of lucid dreaming or mystical experiences or serendipities or anything like that. Just feel that thought. And then we went through some breathing exercises. Then we kind of just kind of relaxed and allowed that to drift in. And through the drift, I kind of went through a quick, I guess, lucid dream, mystical experience, visualization that I saw a past loved one who I hadn't seen, and saw a picture of him standing over basically all a big mountain range that he had been on. It was one of the last pictures I saw of him at his funeral. And during the experience, he basically came to me, hugged me, reminded me that, you know, the world's basically my oyster. It's my kind of playground to play in, kind of what we talked about with play. And that I had spent, and he reminded me that I had given so much energy to the past and to the future that I had not wasted, but I had removed a lot of my energy from the present moment. And he was coming back to reinstall all that energy that he left this earth with before he was able to give, and gave me a hug, and basically told me that everything was okay and that he would see me later. And from that, he reminded me not to take that energy and utilize it in anything less than something that's beneficial for the greater good of the community. And when we start to get into talk about coherence healings, that is something that, as Dr. Joseph says, you can't think about what's going to come up. You just have to let it come up unexpectedly. And that's one of the things as we got into coherence healing, that it was like a kind of like a synchronicity, I guess, around it.
Yeah. And there's so many of these stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't personally experience something, you know, spiritual like that, but so many other people at the event, like we had conversations with them and they all share these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get into the healings or day 5 or whatever we're on, let's talk about the walking meditations, which started on day 3.
Yeah. Day 3, the walking meditations were more for profound for me, but probably a little bit more profound for Taylor, and he'll fill you in. But, you know, the walking meditations allowed us just to get outside and start the first thing outdoors, which is something that we hadn't did. And the walking meditations for myself, the first one it was so much about feeling into your heart and getting past those survival centers and allowing yourself to just be and, you know that you're safe in your heart and that you can give love and also receive love. And for myself, I guess I just really hadn't got past that point, and of being able to fully go both ways, give love and get love based off whatever thoughts for the future, past emotions. And during that walking meditation, I really started to feel a shift in how open my heart was. And I realized that the true key to creation, or to get into a better state, is unlocking that heart and basically opening it wide open. Because the more those floodgates open, the more abundance you give out, which is more abundance that comes back in, which equates to more freedom, more love, more joy. And it was like an aha moment for me. And I just thought about this today when I was crying for whatever, the 3rd, 4th, 5th time, that I remembered that for any of you watching the video, you'll know this, but when you're about to cry and you're like, like that was me. And normally I would just, no, don't be a, B word, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, and push it back down. But I kind of just let it be. And those were these contractions of sending energy out of those stuck centers of 1, 2, and 3, which are those survival centers, and getting up into the heart. And once I got that, it was like bliss. And then, we kind of continued on with a couple rounds of that and getting through walking as if you were already that self, and being able to walk through and see 1,500 people all in this same field outdoors having their own unique experiences was just like me experiencing so much love that I was trying to give out so much love that it was coming back to me as the heart being the magnetic center in equal amount or maybe even more than that. And it was just the energy that day going into after the first walking meditation was like crazy. And of course they play the Whitney Houston remix song of Higher Love. And I mean, we were at a full on rave at 8:30 a.m. and it was just the energy there. No one, no drinking, no drugs, nothing. And I've been to plenty of raves where it's the opposite. And there was equal amount or more energy at 8:30 in the morning at the ballroom here at the Grand Hyatt. So that for me was great. And those continued to be wonderful experiences for all three of them that we had.
Yeah. And then the dance parties after were super fun.
Yeah.
So the walking meditations for me were my favorite part. I would say aside from the coherence healings, they're different, but those are my two favorites. The walking meditations, as you guys know, I love nature. We are nature. And so for me, I'm always outside. Well, not always. I like to spend as much time outside as I can, grounding. After like the third day, I just stopped wearing shoes altogether, like in the hotel, outside, just no shoes. And so, the walking meditations, got to be outside, barefoot, connected to Mother Nature, to Gaia, and got to feel the grass on my feet, the cool grass, because this was at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was cool outside. We got to feel the breeze right on the San Diego coast. It was beautiful. And then combine that. Normally I would be happy in that regardless. I love being outside, especially at the beach. And so combine that with the meditations, which, as Pat said, is all about connecting to that higher version of yourself, that version of yourself that is no longer anxious, that is no longer letting themselves be stressed out by external sources, that is no longer depressed. They allow themselves to be happy. The higher self who is no longer struggling for money, who is abundant, and to walk as that person. How would that person walk? How would you walk if you were no longer, if you no longer had social anxiety? How would you walk if you were so abundant and joyful and stoked on life? How would that person walk? So we do the meditation to connect to that higher self. And then he says, open our eyes. And then we walk as that person. And that was beautiful. And to see like 1,500 other people smiling and joyful and just in this blissed out state, was me seeing other people's happiness and joy is the best feeling for me. Honestly, that is the best feeling that I can experience when I see other people loving. So combine that with nature and getting out to see the sunrise was amazing. And that was one of the biggest, I guess, pet peeves or suggestions that I have for him moving forward, is to get more outdoors time. Because from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., besides the breaks, we're indoors under fluorescent lights, no natural windows. This might be different depending on locations, but sitting all day inside, which we realize is how most people live their lives, right? You go to work, sit down indoors under fluorescent lights, don't go outside for 8 hours, sitting in a chair. That was like torture for me. So these walking meditations were literally a breath of fresh air. I love the walking meditations. Definitely going to continue doing those.
Yeah, those are great. And I'm going to do the same. And Taylor mentioned too, I didn't, with it being relatively middle temperatures, I should say, I won't say the word, but middle temperatures.
It's not cold.
I was skeptical on not wearing shoes, but I guess I could tell a funny story. So, of course, these meditations are true testaments on how well you can be tested and how well you can be overcome on whether it be let your external circumstances really dictate how you feel and act. And during this first walking meditation, I'm feeling great. I'm feeling love. I'm out there walking abundant, like I'm already exactly who I want to be in my dream life, basically being fully open and being very confident in walking, being able to give and get love, and get through this walking portion. And next thing you know, I mean, the grass was somewhat wet already, but next thing you know, I kind of scooted along and felt like I slipped a little bit. And I looked down, and of course we were in a public park, and sure enough, I had slipped in some dog shit, and it was just not pretty. And for me, I just kind of was like, normally I would be very irate or very uncomfortable and have to go right away to wash it off. But being right in the moment, I was so joyful, I guess, that I just kind of wiped as much off with my feet as I could and went on about it and continued on the meditation. Really didn't let that external circumstance get me off of my high horse. And I just kept on with it. And then after the fact, I got to being a bit more playful around it. I've been sitting here laughing about it, thinking like, if anything could have tested me, especially physically, besides a very strong pain or something, that would be it. Because not only was it the idea that it was on my foot, but it was on my foot, kind of weird texture, not pleasant smelling, and knowing I'm going to be around other people where I might smell it. And all these things that could have just came into my mind and I would have just rambled on like I normally would have weren't there. And that was kind of a funny testament. That was, I guess, one of the funnier stories from the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Last thing on the walking meditations is we're out in public. 1,500 people with blindfolds on, headphones on, like tuning out the world. They're making their inner world more real than the outer world. And it's a popular place. Like there's hotels everywhere. People are coming and visiting. They're walking their dogs in the morning, running, and they're seeing all 1,500 people on this little peninsula. And it's funny to see some of their reactions, like what is going on. Some of the videos, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was talking with one of the friends that we met, and she had said that she had walked past this morning, and the homeless people, guys or whatever, were looking at each other and we're like, the zombies are here. Like it's a true apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Yeah, whatever. And it was just funny because and I got some strange looks too. This guy was running. He kept like, kind of squinting at like, what is this? And I smiled at him. And when I smiled at him way bigger than he probably expected me to, he felt like not sure about what was going on. And it was actually interesting to see how disassociated, I guess, society can be with people being happy and trying to improve themselves. It was, but it was pretty funny and a sight to see. And there's I believe some good TikToks and social media posts that people have posted of past walking meditations that, we all got a kick out of watching them in the lecture.
Yeah. So if you like question or analyze why somebody is happy or smiling, that's a problem with just society in general. Like, well, why are you so cheerful today? Like that should be our normal state. That is our normal state. We've gotten so far away from it. That's why my purpose statement is to make thriving standard, to make this joyful, happy, loving state the standard. That should be normal. We should be walking around saying, why are you so down in the dumps today? Like, you're causing that. You're in control of your thoughts, which, by the way, like summary, we should have probably said this at the beginning, but your thoughts control your emotions, and your emotions control the neurochemicals that are released in your brain. So I've talked about this on podcasts before with Mark England and Chase Tollison and Adam Chin, talking about language and how our language and our stories literally create our reality. And, stories lead to emotions, and those emotions create these neurochemicals that cause you to be stressed out, cause you to be anxious and depressed. And if you can change your thoughts, you can change your neurochemistry. That changes how you feel, and you can feel these feelings, and you don't need to rely on any external stimuli to feel these emotions. You can just feel these things. And so, yeah, people giving weird looks. Why is everybody so happy and blissed out? It's like, that should just be normal, and it will eventually. And we're working on that.
Yeah.
So
the next one, I guess 2 more things we can kind of go into would be pineal gland meditation, which was interesting in itself. And then the coherence healing was really, so the pineal gland meditation was 4 a.m. Saturday morning. We had to get there. We started right at 4 a.m. This one we knew was going to be a longer one, and it was, I guess the first thing, just record breaking, no matter I'm assuming for most, that, a 5-hour meditation from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. And it was something that I guess I lost track of time being in no place, no time, nowhere, no one, all that. And it was definitely interesting. Do you want to go into yours? I know mine's a little more in depth with some of the stuff that came up.
Yeah, and we'll condense it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want this to go too long, but the day before we did a long meditation that I believe was over 2 hours. And during that one, I was sitting cross-legged on the floor. And in addition to overcoming my frustration and, urge to get up and do something productive, I had to overcome the urge the first 3 days of wanting to move and adjust myself because my back hurt or my feet were falling asleep or my hip hurt because the chairs they gave us weren't comfortable. So we sat on the floor cross-legged on pillows, back leaned up against the wall. And so I was moving, I was adjusting myself. And of course, whenever you do that, that takes you out of 4D and 5D dimensions and bring you back to reality because you are your body. You're letting your body say, hey, this is uncomfortable. We should move. And the day before, Dr. Joe told a story about how he sat for almost an entire day at a spiritual retreat, even when his legs were on fire, like extreme pain, and he was able to sit with that pain and tune it out. And so I was like, okay, I can do that. So then during not the pineal meditation, but the day before that, I overcame my body because it was a long meditation, sitting cross-legged. Of course, about an hour into it, my feet fell asleep. My hip started to hurt really bad, like I needed to move it. My back was hurting. And I told myself, okay, I'm not going to move. I'm greater than my body. And I told myself, worst case scenario, I lose my legs. Like worst case scenario, my hip dislocates because it felt like it was really stretching. It could pop out of socket. Of course, that probably wasn't going to happen. But worst case scenario, I told myself, I become disabled or paralyzed. They cut my legs off. Okay, so what? What do I need my legs for? There were people at the event who didn't have legs. Like they were in wheelchairs and they were still living life. So I was like, okay, if that's the worst case scenario, I can become greater than my body and sit through this. Right. So I did that. I didn't move the entire time. So that was a win for me. And then so that made this 4 5 hour pineal gland meditation much easier because those urges still come up. I don't know if the urges are ever going to go away. It's just you become stronger than your body and you can control how you respond to those urges. So that was one of my big wins for this week.
Yeah. Creating that awareness is one of the things that I have written down for that meditation. Being 5 hours was just getting over what he calls all the stops, all the urges, all the things. Obviously 5 hours without having to use the restroom. I was cold. I was hungry. A lot of things that just came up that I just pushed through because I turned on that control switch. And then just to, I guess, go not too far in depth, but basically being so long, there was a lot of states where we were able to get into as much pure consciousness as possible. And for me, I got in to see a couple different visuals of things personally that came up. And those really just, you could feel that you were literally all energy. Like I didn't have convulsions or anything, but just having this rush of energy across my whole body, basically, as he mentions, like all of your cells inside are just jiggling and then just electrified. And there was like a warmth of like joy and love that like just flooded multiple times throughout the meditation for 5 to 10 seconds at a time. And that alone was powerful, and really just being able to get through something that well. And the actual meditation just reminded me a lot of the things that came up. It was love others, and in turn that will allow you to love yourself, because the more you love others, the more that radiates back, as your heart is the magnetic center, and the more you can love yourself. So it's a equal exchange. And that's really what started once we got into the coherence healings. I had to continue to remember that, because that was, as Taylor mentioned, probably one of the better parts, aside from just the overall community of so many like-minded people that you got to meet from 40 different countries, that it would take a lifetime to meet that many different people just traveling. So the love others was like, just giving all that love was huge. And then that's kind of where we got into the coherence healing, which was the last 3 days. We did 3 separate coherence healings.
Yeah. So very brief, basic rundown of what this is you get however many people, it was typically 6 to 8 people sitting. So like rows sitting, like one here, like this, if you can see that. And then a quote unquote sick person in the middle, whether they had cancer or back pain, their legs were disabled, severe depression, whatever it was, we didn't know. But these people had signed up for and got accepted to be the healies, to get this healing. And after we had gone through a lot of these meditations and understanding brain and heart coherence and more love and joy and excitement, and by the way, that showed in the dance parties before each lecture every day. The first day, like we were some of the first ones up there, and it was relatively small. And then as the days progressed, and then today, everybody was dancing. Like, so it grew. The happiness and the love kept growing. And so on day 5, Friday, we did our first coherence healing, where these sick people were laying on the floor, and we sat across from them on both sides. We did a heart coherence meditation before we entered the room. We were connecting with our hearts, connecting to the healer in us, and expressing love and health. And like I mentioned earlier, the greatest feeling I have experienced is seeing other people like thrive, like other people's love, other people overcoming themselves. Like on the walking meditation we did this morning, I saw that guy stand up out of his wheelchair and walk it was like the 3rd time that he had done that. He did it this week. And that was just like so much joy and love for that. So in this coherence healing, I was like shaking before we even went in. I just felt so much energy, and I was so ready to heal these people, because without going super in depth into it, we connect to our heart and then we sit down and face our palms towards them. And a lot of times they get better. They're at like a 38+% healing rate for a lot of the people that do these coherence healings. And so I was so ready. And I'm a giver, like I said, and I've always known, well, not always, but within the past year, I realized that I have so much love to give. And this is my chance. We get to heal other people through our love. We get to give life to another person. And so as soon as we walked through those doors, I started feeling it, see all these people laying down. I started tearing up, crying. I was so happy. I was so ready. And then we sat down. I sat down next to the DJ who put on the little dance party that we went to. He was sitting next to me. And man, it was the most amount of love I have ever experienced in my entire life. My body was shaking. Like I could just feel the energy going through me. I was like visualizing it going through my palms, like healing this woman who was on the floor. And I've done MDMA, which is, ecstasy. It creates significant amounts of serotonin, which creates a lot of happiness. And it was better than that. This experience was better than pure MDMA, just the amount of love that I felt. And especially sitting next to this guy, we were definitely in it. We were coherent. We were giving off the same energy. We were both crying our eyes out. There's just so much love coming. And yeah, that was an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm. We got to do that 2 more days in a row.
Yeah.
And same thing for myself. It was just, I guess 2 of the things is funny. Dr. Joe talks about things that come up in unexpected ways. And the 2 things that came up that really triggered me was when we were in these heart coherence meditations, especially Friday, which was the day I saw my cousin in this dream. And basically he said, give the energy of life. And I automatically thought back to, in that meditation earlier that day, my cousin literally gifted me his energy of the life that he took away. And what better way for me to share his legacy, I guess, and also know that I can have equal amount of energy come back to me if I give this energy instead of just holding it hostage. And so that first day, I just gave it all and gave all that energy to the woman that we were healing. And that felt so good. And the actual idea that I gave it up to help someone else was really what the ecstasy was. It wasn't as much about this energy is coming out that I was feeling. It was just that act of giving, and that knowing that giving was equally also receiving for me and healing. And then the second day, he also mentioned, it was kind of a synchronicity for me. I've been doing some of these meditations, and he talks about thinking of this clear intention. And for some reason, my clear intention has always been the unlimited servant, the servant who is willing to serve everyone else, but also doesn't put themselves second, because knowing serving myself would actually in turn allow me to serve others at the best of my ability. And he said during the meditation, he said, be the unlimited person. And right away, it was like, I had been meditating on that unlimited servant for so long. And it was like, now's my chance. I'm like, holy crap, like now's my chance. Who would have thought that? I didn't even know I was going to be the event. And now all of a sudden, at times I was within 5 feet from Joe Dispenza. And so that was super empowering. And then today, the last day of the healing was good for me. It reminded me of just love and that I got to get out of these energy centers. And I got into that same thing where I was like, and it was pulling that energy up out of here. And once I got into I was crying once I was in here, but then once I got to my heart, it was like this freeing feeling of just true peace, like and freedom and relaxation, that once I was there, I was ultimately safe. And that was, and that took me giving first, and then also being okay with receiving. And that was great in itself.
Yeah. So that first coherence healing we did, when he said, like, you giving life to another life, like you giving is you receiving, I fucking bawled my eyes out, because like I said, I had trouble receiving, and to experience that amount of love, and then I'm giving that to another person, another human being that is suffering, that feeling for me was, like I said, the greatest feeling I've ever felt, because I gave love and I received love for myself. And then we turned our palms back inwards and placed them on our hearts. And then that's when he said, the love that you give is the love that you feel, because we're picturing our energy, our love coming out of our palms. We place them in on our hearts, and then we're giving ourselves that love. So it was profound. And then today, the lady we healed said that was the best coherence healing that she had all week out of the 3. And yeah, she had all these visuals, and she said that was the best that she's ever felt. And a serendipity that we had was she had met me, I believe it was in the elevator, like going onto the elevator, like walking to the event that day. And we had talked a little bit. And then I just randomly went to her to heal her. And it's all random. Like we all line up outside the doors and we walk in. We don't know who we're going to. And so she mentioned that. She's like, I can't believe that I met you today. And then now you're the one healing me. And so that was so cool. We had a moment, we connected, we hugged, we cried. And she said that she's going to email us with like all the changes that she's experienced.
Yeah.
So,
and I had the lady that we had healed today, after it, they get some time to kind of get up, and they're laying on the floor. And the lady that we were working with had, from my understanding, chronic back pain. And so we, of course, being the healers, or reach out our hand to really allow her to get up. And although we still helped her up just to kind of get up off the ground, she kind of leaned up in surprise, and she looked at us, and she basically said, it doesn't hurt anymore. And she got up and she was like, hold on, let me twist. And she's like, she started really just crying, and she just like touched all of us, and all she could do was hug us and thank us so much. And you know, we replied back that it wasn't, she didn't need to thank us. We were thanking her for allowing us to give so much love, because we got to receive it back. And that was huge. And just to know that one simple act helped someone maybe change so much more for them, for not only for them, but their family and everything. And that was like, I mean, that was profound in itself. If I didn't get anything out of the rest of the experience, that alone, to be able to do that was awesome. And it's got me thinking about how I can continue on with that, I guess with those volunteer type work or any type of service work that some of they have kind of wrapped around some of these events, to continue on and really get that feeling.
They have certified coherence healing teams that are certified by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And I'm absolutely going to become a part of those. I'm going to wait a little bit once I become more in touch with the meditations, and once I understand these things on a deeper level myself, because then that will only allow me to provide greater healing, even though I don't know, I feel like I'm just a natural healer. Like I said, I've always been a giver. I've always been of service. I joined the Marine Corps. I wanted to serve in that way. And I became a CrossFit coach, thought that was, the answer to the health epidemic that we were having. Figured out that wasn't the answer, became a holistic lifestyle specialist, started helping people with all these other things. And now this is like the pinnacle of that. Like, yes, sleep, mindset, nutrition, exercise, sunlight, these things are still important. And it can just be elevated by doing this work of Dr. Joe Dispenza and these coherence healings. So I'm absolutely going to continue doing that.
Yeah.
Both from a selfish and a selfless standpoint, because again, me giving is me getting.
Yeah.
It's
give love, get love.
Yeah.
That's what I was telling all week.
It was amazing.
Yep. And then before we wrap it up, Taylor knows this, but he hasn't heard these yet. So you guys are the first ones to hear these, but right. I've been taking a little bit of notes on some of the things that I've saw in Taylor and some changes. First, obviously acknowledging him I literally texted him and was like, hey, I'm going to this event. Him and I only meeting one other time for 3 hours ever in our life. And he's like, I'll go too. And as Dr. Joe said, he was just as eager to get on there because he must have been refreshing, because this 1,500 person event sold out in 3 to 4 minutes. And he was, and I were one of the fortunate ones to get tickets to this event. So, his, I guess, just his vulnerability to just go after it and just do it, even though he had been practicing the work as in-depth as me. Not to say that he can't get to that point or won't be to that point, probably past me soon. But that was huge. And when we got here, getting to know the schedule and getting to him to be, as you mentioned, out of his routine a little bit, I definitely saw his, he is a little bit loving towards his productivity, which understandably so. He's an entrepreneur. It's kind of the typical entrepreneur mindset, I guess. A little bit of skepticism. And like he mentioned, why am I sitting here through these meditations for an hour and a half where I could literally done so much in an hour and a half? And so that alone was, I saw that. And for me, I just remember to give him space, and it's his experience, and just allowed him to work through his own stuff. And really just within the first few days of him being a little bit, creating a much more calmness around it, and him analytical mind, seeing a little bit of the what and the why, I think started to trigger, okay, now I'll believe it a little bit. And then he tried a little more and believed a little bit more. And then he got into getting a little bit more comfortable through that. So that was huge for him. And then really it was just the walking meditation. Once the walking meditations hit, it was like, he was just like a million heart emojis. Like he was just like a love animal. I mean, we talked and connected with so many people and on so many conversations that we never would have on surface level conversations. And, he got vulnerable about certain stuff. People got vulnerable to him because he was obviously expressing love, and obviously his heart was opening big. And the walking meditation was, a huge shift for him.
Turning point.
Yeah. Turning point. And
I just need that nature.
And then I just noticed that, like he mentioned, his love for giving is now even greater than it even was before, which, like he mentioned, he's already been a giver. So it seems kind of surreal that could even be possible, but it's already being seen. And the last was just his originality and his okay with not being conventional, because I can understand in his mind is, he's living the life that he wants to live, and no one needs to put those projections on him. And ultimately, what's fun with being conventional or being the normal, as we can see with society, it's not doing us the great job. And as Dr. Joe said, it's not about the religion or the government or Medicare that's going to save you. It's you that's going to save you. And he's kind of the epitome of doing that. And that going into it, I can definitely tell that he's spending less. He will be, I'm assuming, going to be spending less time rushing around getting things done, and just being that conscious creator of every little thing, not to perfectionism, but to know that it's getting the most value out of it. Because the more he gives love into those posts or podcasts or interviews or photo shoots or anything that he does, the more he's going to get in return in a selfless and selfish way. And that alone, in 7 days, to go from someone that was highly productive and obviously tied to his productivity, mad we had to go to this meditation, wanted to get to lunch, needed to be outside. I mean, I mean, he still has those, like he said, those urges are still, I'm sure, coming up for him, but they're less and less powerful, and his awareness around it has changed all within 7 days. And he's only been doing this for, he's only did it for 35 hours. And, most skills and I guess techniques take, years and years to develop. So, being in that fast start, and as he said, he's going to continue to work on it, is just not only going to be beneficial for him, but obviously all of his community. So love.
Pat, appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. Again, if you have any questions about our experiences, not necessarily about the work, because again, we don't know shit. We're just learning these things. If you have any questions about our experience or where you should go to find out more resources, then you could hit us up. Shout out your Instagram.
Yeah, my IG that I utilize is Pat Smith Wellness, PATSMITH, as simple as that is, wellness. So Pat Smith Wellness.
Yep, perfect. And the links to purchase Becoming Supernatural and Dr. Joe's website will be in the links in the show notes below. So thank you guys for listening. Sending you all love and light. And until next time, don't forget, live the captain's lifestyle. Peace.